Does get stuck in lead to more red cards? That is the question we are looking to answer in today's FM24 experiment. But we're not just going to look at red cards, we're also going to look at some other statistics that may be important for you all throughout the season, including fouls given away, tackles won and tackles won percentage, as well as other things like yellow cards. And to conduct this experiment, we are doing this with West Ham. In the season preview, West Ham are predicted to finish 10th. So I figured this would be better to do with a mid-table club, as opposed to a club that would have vastly less possession or vastly more possession than their opponents throughout the season. So to conduct this experiment, we are going to run the 2023-24 season twice while keeping as many variables the same as we can. So we're going to have the same starting lineup throughout the season, as well as the same bench. And we're going to have the exact same formation and tactics throughout the season. The only thing we're going to change is whether or not the get stuck in instruction is clicked. So for the first part of this simulation, we do not have the get stuck in instruction clicked. So we are going to do this season normally. Then once the season is over, we will look at the stats, and then we'll go back, rerun the season with everything exactly the same, except we will click on the get stuck in instruction. And then we'll compare the stats at the end of that season to see whether or not there were more red cards, more fouls, so on and so forth. And the tactic we're using is just a generic 4-3-3 gegenpress. I figured we shouldn't make anything too fancy. We're just looking at the get stuck in instruction here. So with that, everything is set up. Let's simulate to the end of this season and see what our baseline looks like. And we are at the end of our first run of the 23-24 season. As a reminder, this has no get stuck in instruction. And West Ham finished 9th with 52 points, 14 wins, 10 draws, and 14 losses. So overall, it was a solid season for West Ham. Now let's get into those stats. And for those of you who maybe don't know, if you're ever interested in seeing those stats, you can just go to stats at your division page and go to team overview. And this gives you a general look at the stats. But what we're going to look at is the team detailed, where you get some pretty specific general, formulated, as well as attacking and defensive stats. So we're going to take a good look at those attacking and defensive stats. So starting off with red cards, it looks like our normal value is around 1. So West Ham had 1 red card throughout the season. Interestingly, though, looking at yellow cards, West Ham did have among the highest yellows in the division, with 51 yellows. So interestingly, despite not having the get stuck in instruction enabled, they still had quite a few yellows throughout the season. Looking at some of our defensive statistics now, West Ham had 445 fouls throughout the season, which turned out to be right around mid-table. Looking at total tackles won, they were towards the bottom of the division, only winning 767 tackles. But I think the more interesting thing is the ratio of tackles that they won. And that was also towards the bottom of the division, 76%. They were around 15th. So really in the tackling department, I don't think West Ham was all that great without the get stuck in instruction. And finally, looking at the total number of times that West Ham won possession throughout the season, they were 9th with 3,556 possessions won. So overall, looking at those defensive and overall statistics, without the get stuck in instruction, West Ham was pretty average or even a little below average for all these statistics. So this is what a season without the get stuck in instruction looked like. Let's go back to the beginning of the season. We'll enable the get stuck in instruction, and then we'll go forward again. All right, we are back at the beginning now, and everything is exactly the same. We have the exact same tactics, exact same starting lineup, exact same bench. Again, the only difference here is now the get stuck in instruction is on. So we are now instructing our players to be more aggressive and to look to be stronger in the tackle. So let's simulate this season and see how that affects those stats we were looking at earlier. And welcome back. We are at the end of the season. And overall, West Ham finished 9th again. So as far as just the get stuck in instruction is concerned, there was no difference in where they finished in the table. They did get, 3 extra points, but I don't think that makes a huge difference throughout the season. So it seems that as far as the get stuck in instruction itself, it didn't really make a difference as far as how West Ham did throughout the season. But again, let's look at those stats and see what that looks like. So let's start off by looking at red cards. And West Ham were one of the higher teams, but they only got 2 reds throughout the season. I think last season they just had the 1 red card. So as far as does the get stuck in instruction lead to more red cards, in one season, I don't think there's a statistically significant difference, but maybe if we extrapolate this over 5 seasons, it would. But just having one more red card in one season, I don't think we can say that there were significantly more red cards. That being said, I don't think we can say the same thing about yellows. West Ham were the leaders in yellow cards with the get stuck in instruction in the EPL. Last season, we had 51 yellows. This season, we have 75. That's a huge difference. And given that West Ham were the league leaders in yellows, yeah, that makes a big difference. The get stuck in instruction definitely led to more yellows. And again, looking at some of those defensive statistics, West Ham are now the leaders in fouls made with 585 fouls. Last season it was 445. West Ham are now the leaders in the division for the number of fouls they gave up. There's a big difference in the number of fouls. Despite all those fouls, though, West Ham were among the leaders in the division in tackles won. Last season, it was 767 tackles won. This season, 903. So that being said, West Ham were much better as far as winning tackles, and as far as the tackles won ratio is concerned. I think last season it was 75 or 76%, but they were much further down the table. This season, West Ham were 4th in the division. So getting stuck in definitely makes a difference as far as winning tackles and winning them with a higher ratio. Finally, looking at the total number of possessions won, West Ham were better. Last season, they were at 3,556. I think they were down in 14th. This season, they're only up to 11. So they did win possession back more times. I don't know if, though, that they won it significantly more times with the get stuck in instruction. I'm wondering if that difference is purely from winning more tackles and other ways of winning possession back are not necessarily reflected in this statistic. So those are all the statistics. So overall, did the get stuck in instruction make a difference in the way West Ham played? Absolutely. They won more tackles, and they won tackles at a higher ratio. Did that lead to more fouls? Yes. Did that lead to more yellow cards? Absolutely. So if you have the get stuck in instruction, should you consider maybe suspensions from yellows and yellow card accumulation? That is definitely something to think about. That being said, I can't say that there were more red cards. There was only one more red card compared to last season and only 2 total. So it doesn't seem like the get stuck in instruction necessarily led to more red cards, but it definitely led to more yellows. It definitely led to more fouls. But on the good side, they won more tackles and they won them at a higher percentage. So that is how the get stuck in instruction affected West Ham's season. Definitely some interesting results here. Definitely some intuitive results as well. But that being said, I hope that you've found this video informative and that you enjoyed this FM24 experiment. And I will see you all in the next video.